Welcome to the SVG-TV news for today, Monday, July 26th. I'm Khalil Cato with the details. The Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, the CPEA, which is a regional assessment model offered by the Caribbean Examinations Council, will be held here over the next 2 days. 1,895 grade 6 students comprising of 961 males and 934 females will sit the external component of the exam. A news release from the Ministry of Education said the external component of the assessment comprises 4 multiple-choice papers in 4 areas: mathematics, social studies, language arts, and science. Each paper consists of 50 items with a duration of 1 hour and 15 minutes per paper. The multiple choice, which is the external component of the assessment, accounts for 60% of the final score. And the school-based assessment, the SBA, the internal component, accounts for 40%. Day 1, tomorrow, will be mathematics and social studies, and on day 2, on Wednesday, it will be language arts and science. The news release said the results are expected to be released by CXC in August, allowing sufficient time for the Ministry of Education to conduct its secondary placement exercise for the new academic year, 2021-2022. In light of the recent eruption of SOUFRIERE and the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ministry said the total number of examination centers this year is 41 and urges all stakeholders during the examination period to adhere to the guidelines provided by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment to ensure public safety. SVGTV News spoke to a number of principals or head teachers via telephone on the CPEA exams 2021. They say teachers have done their best under the circumstances to ensure their students are as prepared as possible for the exams, though there are some mixed feelings on just how prepared the students are, given the struggles with online instruction due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the eruption of the SOUFRIERE volcano.
In regards to the preparedness, we think that we have done all that we could, bearing in mind that we have the volcanic eruption, we had the COVID-19, the dengue and so forth, and it has been a challenge. So we have done our best in light of the current status of education as we speak today. We have also tried to, make the children feel comfortable, and we have also worked in the time allotted to ensure that our students are properly prepared for the CPA.
We are confident about a few children. A few children would have been on the ball, but the majority of them are not that confident. We are not as confident about the majority of them. Some of them, I think they're frustrated because of the length of time it took for them to do the exam. Because remember, we normally do the exam in May, and now we're going on to July. So that would have had an impact on the children. I just hope that when they move on to secondary school, that they settle down, put their heads down, and do what they know they can do. Things would have been better if we had the regular instructions.
They would have had 11 weeks face-to-face within this third term. So I think the face-to-face was a good thing. They were able to interact with their teachers and so on. So I believe that they are covered. But as I said, if it was strictly face-to-face, then I might have feel a little better, But the breaks will have an impact. Nothing can beat face-to-face. But I think the ministry gave them enough time to sort of pull back and fill in the gaps and so on.
The Grenadine schools, we have returned to face-to-face teaching, right? So we have been working with them. We feel somewhat confident that they are prepared, because when they return, the teachers would have been online when we had the break, and they would have been working even beyond the call of duty, because they would go on in the evening, do different things with them at weekends too. Mm-hmm. And we have been working with them a lot of past papers and so on. So we know that they are prepared. And then the exam now has been reduced to the topics from K to 5. So now the grade 6 topics, which we would have taught also. So they should be well prepared.
President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, is encouraging the CPEA students to remain focused and to have a positive energy going into the exam rooms. Robinson's advice for the students is to think critically and to do the best they can. He also asked that parents be supportive of their children.
On Thursday, we want to wish you all the best. Put your best foot forward. Read your questions very carefully. Think critically and also do your best. This is a time that we look forward when our students would do their exams in going into secondary school. It is a time when parents and teachers are even more anxious, but we also want to ask for parents and our teachers to be relaxed and to encourage the students also to relax and to do their best in their exams. So all the best, and I hope that our students would be very successful given the challenging times that we have been preparing these students for the CPA exams.
The Teachers Union president thanked teachers for their hard work and effort in preparing the students for the assessment despite the challenges faced this past year.
The majority of our teachers are very committed to their work, and we know that they have spent a lot of time, their monies, their views, their electricity, their internet to ensure that these students are prepared. And some would have even gone to school and to meet with the students physically so that they could adequately prepare them. I know that they have done their best given the circumstances, the challenging time faced by COVID, the volcanic eruption, and all the other things that would have impacted on the students and the teachers and also the parents. And I want to wish everybody all the best.
SVG is expected to soon welcome the first cruise ship visit in over a year since the COVID-19 pandemic. This is according to Minister of Tourism Carlos James, who said on radio on Sunday that his ministry is putting all necessary arrangements in place to create a bubble for all cruise visitors who are expected to be fully vaccinated. He said that the early restart to the cruise tourism in SVG is welcomed at this time.
Recently, as early as the latest Friday, concluded the negotiations to have our first cruise called the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And this is going to take place much sooner than we anticipated across the various stakeholders across the industry anticipated. And we're hoping that we can really have a very successful cruise season, and that is one of the things that we intend to announce on Tuesday in terms of the amount of calls that we're expecting to have so far for this season, and quite a few of them are inaugural calls coming here for the very first time.
Minister James said that visitors who disembark cruise ships will only go to areas that have met the requirements or protocols of a bubble for visitors. He said one of the main aspects of the bubble is to have all workers in the industry fully vaccinated.
How the protocols will work. A fully vaccinated vessel comes here, both passengers and crew. They call onto our port, and let's use Kingston for an example. Essentially, the cruise terminal at Kingston then becomes a part of that bubble. It means that only persons who are vaccinated would be able to go into that bubble. Now, you might say, well, why is the Minister of Tourism asking or requesting that? Essentially, this is something that is agreed on between both the cruise lines, our local ministry, as well as the other countries in which these cruises will be operating.
According to the tourism minister, the protocols for cruise tourism are expected to be completed within days. He said all tourism stakeholders are expected to benefit from the cruise season once they comply with the measures, including getting vaccinated.
Anyone who operates within that bubble are persons who must be fully vaccinated. For instance, as I said, once the ship comes to Kingston, passengers who disembark, they can only interact with people who are vaccinated. Precisely. So for instance, usually, what would occur is that a passenger would leave the cruise ship terminal and walk around Kingston on their own and probably go into a shop or a store. They will not be able to do that. So we're essentially creating this bubble for two fundamental reasons. One, is to protect our local population from the persons who are coming. And remember, they're coming, they're not essentially coming and on the contrast. If you're coming by air, you have 48 hours to quarantine, and then you can walk around freely. Those that are coming by ship, they don't then quarantine for 48 hours on arrival to St. Vincent and walk around. They're coming straight off of the ships.
Meanwhile, Minister James said they are hoping to get vendors on board in the bubble for the cruise ship season, but they have to be fully vaccinated. The minister said those who are not vaccinated will not be allowed to sell to the visitors, as the ministry is attempting to control their movements and also looking out for the safety of locals.
Someone who's selling a craft in and around Kingston, or a vendor who's selling fresh bananas or some other fruit which the guests might want to enjoy during the walk around in Kingston and other places, they will then not have the benefit of having them come into their stalls in and around the city. So I've made it very clear that we want to encourage and to include vendors as part of the bubble. So what I'm hoping will take place, and I'm looking at this in a very broad way, is to, once a vendor has met the requirements for the bubble, they will be able to come into the site. It's a controlled environment, but they will be able to come into the site and to ply their trade there. Because that's how they will be able to also make a living from, continued making a living from the tourism sector within this period.
Directly from
that.
The minister is encouraging persons to get vaccinated and noting that it is not too late to do so. Over the past month, the minister has been meeting with stakeholders across the island on the reopening of the sector and the importance of getting vaccinated, which he said has been helpful. A virtual tourism stakeholders conference is also planned for August 4th and 5th. And as the tourism industry gets ready to welcome back visitors, including those on cruise ships, the vaccination status of employees, taxi and tour operators has become the focus of concern. President of the SVG Hotel and Tourism Association, Kim Halbish, says several members are facing strong pushback from their staff to be vaccinated, despite informative sessions held to educate them on the vaccines.
We have maybe 2 or 3 establishments that have reached fully vaccinated staff. All the others are getting quite a bit of pushback in terms of hesitancy. Some are doing a little better than others, but it has not been easy. Yeah, it's a difficult thing trying to encourage persons to become vaccinated. The hotels have had meetings, and
Halbish said that a decision on whether to let go of unvaccinated employees will depend on the public and private sector coming together. However, it would not be ideal for many businesses.
One, it has to be a public-private sector initiative. It can't be just the private sector saying, well, if you don't get vaccinated, we have to let you go, because obviously a lot of the properties have been suffering for a year and a half. A lot of the companies, dive shops, tour operators have had no business. So if in order for them to sever or terminate persons would probably be very difficult at this time, and many of them may have to close their doors. So it has to be something that is a public-private sector understanding, where moving forward, it is a difficult situation where persons feel that they have the right to say if they want to take vaccine or not, and they don't feel that their place of employment should force them to. So they're trying to encourage, but it's difficult.
Speaking on the recent decision to only allow vaccinated taxi operators to operate out of the Argyle International Airport, Halbish says if the mandate is given for hoteliers and other operators in the industry to do the same, they will follow suit, noting that guests are also asking to deal with only fully vaccinated staff.
So we work in conjunction with the Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Authority, and persons that are licensed, first of all, is persons who we use. If the mandate comes from them to use only vaccinated taxi drivers, tour operators, etc., we will have no choice. But the industry is putting it forward anyway. It's not something coming from the government, it's coming from the industry. You can see it if you look at all the other countries, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia. little by little, the industry is demanding. Cruise ships are saying they're not going with taxi drivers if they're not vaccinated. They're not going to establishments to support them unless their staff is fully vaccinated. So it is not something that is unique to St. Vincent in any way. We may be standing out the hardest for not taking the vaccine, but it's really the industry. And it's the only way forward. Right now, we have people who want to go on a boat. They're not going unless the staff is vaccinated. We have persons who come into the establishment to book events, and they're asking what is the percentage of vaccination staff members you have, or could you make sure the members who are the staff members working at that time is vaccinated. We're getting it. Well, little by little. It's not overwhelming yet, but it's coming.
The president of the Hotel and Tourism Association reiterated the importance of getting vaccinated and its impact on the industry.
I believe that unless we become vaccinated, we're not going to move forward. We're not going to have a season. And it's like living with a knife over your head, wondering who is positive and what can happen. If they could infect the whole country and cause us to close down. We've just come through a year and a half of no work. Difficult, maybe more difficult for some than others, but the only way for us to move forward is to stop the pandemic, and the only way to stop it is to stop the virus from spreading is to be vaccinated.
Meanwhile, President of the SVG Taxi Association, Winston Pops Morgan, said the decision was not surprising to bar unvaccinated cabbies from operating out of the Argyle International Airport.
It would come to that because guests who come in requesting vaccinated drivers, persons that booking hotels are doing the same. So it's just a matter of time before it would come to that. I mean, if persons are vaccinated, it's only fair that they'd want to deal with persons who are vaccinated themselves. We still have a reluctance towards the vaccine. I know because of all the ills you're hearing on the social media platforms as against vaccination. The persons who wage a good campaign against vaccination has been able to touch persons easily because of how easy accessible the internet and so on is in these times. And I think it has created some fear in persons who want to take the vaccine. I know there are a lot of persons who want to take it, but they're hearing about deaths and blood clots and the like. They have them thinking twice. But when it becomes a point where you have to, and I guess it'll be a different situation.
Morgan, who is fully vaccinated, said with time everyone will get vaccinated, noting that some members have expressed the desire to take a one-shot vaccine, such as the Johnson & Johnson or a Cuban-manufactured vaccine.
I have taken the vaccine myself. I had no complications, and I have no reason to advise anyone to not take it. I mean, saying if you want tourism, the world to come back to some semblance of normalcy, I think that's the way to go. I think with time, persons would get on the bandwagon, be vaccinated, because if it's your livelihood and you're directly affected, I mean, 2 seasons, plus we have not had a cruise ship season. A lot of the drivers do well when tourist boat is in. So if you're not having that influx of work that would bring the much needed money, you could take care of your family. You have to do what they have to do to get it right. So I would urge them to get vaccinated. I mean, you can always have a session with your medical practitioner and do your checkups, check on your health, and all being well, proceed to take the vaccine. Don't get left behind.
And 8 new positive COVID-19 cases were reported from 281 cases processed on Friday, July 23rd, resulting in a positivity rate of 2.8%. One of the 8 new cases is an imported case from the United Kingdom. No new positive cases were reported from the 232 samples processed on Thursday, July 22nd. No new recoveries were noted over the reporting period. 68 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 2,279 cases of COVID-19 and 2,199 recoveries have been recorded in SVG since March 2020. Health authorities say persons who persist in incorrect or no mask use, remain unvaccinated and participate in mass gatherings will continue to be at risk for being infected and spreading COVID-19, and that to reduce the spread of the virus in the country, compliance with the protocols, including effective use of masks, physical distancing, and the evidence-based recommendations to be vaccinated with the available vaccines is strongly recommended. The SOUFRIERE volcano continues to steam with few earthquakes, as is normal for a post-eruptive phase of any volcano. This is according to Uracilla Joseph, the lead scientist, that should be Dr. Uracilla Joseph, the lead scientist monitoring the volcano, who was on radio this morning giving an update on SOUFRIERE from the Belmont Observatory at Rose Hall.
Quiet. Yesterday, as of noon yesterday, we only had 11 events detected. There's been no new alerts by NASA firms, hotspots, but we know that the deposits, they are still hot and will take some time to cool. On the 22nd of July, we did a boat traverse to measure the SO2 flux, and it was only 233 tons per day.
Dr. Joseph said they continue to check on the equipment already installed to monitor the activities of the volcano, noting that the signal station at the summit is yet to be installed.
Well, there was only two things that were outstanding when Mr. Lynch and Mr. Williams left. And that was one, to finalize the telemetry at the seismic station at the upper Waterloo. Yeah. And that actually that was being worked on yesterday. And today that will be completed. We'll be able to see the instruments and connect. Mr. Azrael Price of the SMU assisted with that yesterday, and he's going to complete that connection today. Yes. So that was the one item that was outstanding. And the second thing that was outstanding is, of course, the station at the summit. So that, of course, we're still looking on to see when helicopter support might be available, or if the train, whichever the trail might be accessible, whichever one comes first.
The volcano last erupted explosively on April 22nd, with a decline in seismic activity recorded since. Over the weekend, the majority of residents from Chateaubelair and Fitzhughes returned home after the all-clear was given for them to reoccupy these communities. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said that approximately 400 residents left the shelters to return home, with some of the shelters now closed.
So I expect that by Friday, all the other persons from that area would move. Nearly 400 have moved out there, certainly by Saturday, day before yesterday. So the numbers are dwindling. I would expect, therefore, that the numbers would be 1,600 and something when we get the report tomorrow. And some shelters will close. So all that is, again, progress as we try to return to some normalcy.
The remaining residents are expected to return later this week, completing the resettlement of the communities on the leeward end. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Gonsalves said that progress is being made in the rebuilding of SVG following the explosive eruptions of SOUFRIERE. The Prime Minister said that part of the rehabilitation is the humanitarian work on the ground.
The humanitarian work phase is still going on, because we have a substantial number of people still in shelters, and also in private homes and in hotel guest houses who are not yet moving back, obviously, because the conditions are not appropriate for them to move back safe and healthy. So we're getting there, however, day by day, sweet Jesus.
As it relates to cleaning and demarcation of non-habitable areas, the Prime Minister said that the work is in the advanced stage of completion.
We are beginning the early phases of the reconstruction. All the social support systems are in place, so the government and various agencies, including the United Nations and Red Cross. So we and the churches and NGOs. So we have a rhythm in which we're doing these things. Occasionally there'll be a hiccup here or there, but broadly speaking, things are in order.
In other news, Governor General Her Excellency Dame Susan Duggan has expressed pleasure in having the current president of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır, visit the island at this time. Her Excellency was speaking at a cocktail reception last evening, hosted by her at the Beachcombers Hotel in honor of the UN President and his wife, who is accompanying him on the visit. Dame Susan described Bosquer as a veteran diplomat with an illustrious career in diplomacy and thanked the United Nations under his presidency for its assistance after the April eruptions of La Soufriere.
Truly grateful for the assistance from the United Nations in the aftermath of the catastrophic eruption of the La Soufriere volcano. And Your Excellency is acutely aware of the devastations caused by natural disasters. You have had your share of it in Turkey, the earthquakes, and I applaud you for promoting the climatic change agenda. We are truly happy that you have visited us during this very busy period. Welcome to you and your wife, and thank you for gracing us with your presence, especially as it is your first visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has described the ceremony for the President of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly as a celebration and commemoration of the UN systems to the world for peace and prosperity, and the development and strengthening of democratic institutions and the elevation of human rights. Speaking at the cocktail ceremony held in honor of the visiting president last evening, Prime Minister Gonsalves said it was a clear celebration of the relations between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Republic of Turkey, as the President of the General Assembly is a very distinguished citizen of Turkey, though this is not a visit by a Turkish diplomat or leader. PM Gonsalves also noted that the ceremony also celebrated the life and work of His Excellency, who has done tremendous work for his country and humanity. Speaking on the issue of international law and non-interference in the domestic affairs of other countries, Prime Minister Gonsalves emphasized that the principles are entrenched in international law, which he said are central pillars of the General Assembly. He pointed out that at the General Assembly, each country has one vote and none is more equal than the other, even though it may appear so to some. This, he says, is a fundamental principle that must be upheld.
So the United States of America, at the General Assembly, the President has the same time to speak as I have at the General Assembly. Our diplomats are recognized in the same way. Never mind, as the most powerful country in the world, some may say the most powerful empire that the world has ever seen. But that powerful country has to respect the sovereignty, the independence, and the equality of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's a very important proposition. And then, of course, it follows that we defend, maintain, and uphold the principles of sovereignty and independence and the non-interference in the internal affairs of states.
PM Gonsalves also spoke on the U.S. sanctions applied to Venezuela under former President Trump, which he said are not only hurting Venezuela, but SVG as well.
The Trump sanctions against Venezuela, as a consequence of that, the Petrocaribe arrangements with our country, where we got concessional terms in buying fuel from Venezuela, for or electricity, for instance, where we had a gain anytime, depending on the price of oil, between 20 million and 35 million US dollars annually. That was used to fight poverty and to build houses and to help with education and the like, and the health system. That source of money is no longer available to us. So we are victims too of these unilateral, illegal sanctions. And it would be remiss of me, in the presence of the President of the General Assembly, the current session, if I didn't speak these things, because...
And in addressing the welcoming ceremony, His Excellency Bosquier highlighted the importance of the UN General Assembly to the world, noting that the organization has a lot of experience and compiled possibilities, and if used properly, it can be helpful to the regions and the countries for peace and stability. However, he admitted that the UN could be one of the slowest working mechanisms if you don't force it to work efficiently.
Countries in need is LDCs, LLDCs, SIDS, middle-income countries, whoever. Countries who had an earthquake, countries who had a volcanic eruption, countries who was hit by a hurricane, countries who lost tourism, countries who lost remittances and didn't get vaccine. Fairly and equitable distribution of vaccine is today our priority and our issue. We cannot allow 80% of the population receive 3% of the vaccines and 20% of the population receive 80% of the vaccines. So, other than that, it was my second priority was gender issues. And I declared myself a gender champion, and I really believe in the power of women.
His Excellency Bosquier pointed out that when he first took up the office of the President of the UN General Assembly's 75th session, he expressed his priorities, first of which was to help countries in need, and secondly, gender equality.
Once you force the United Nations to work, then you get very speedy actions. Of course, I think the principal organ for me, not because I'm the President, but it's the General Assembly. Out of the three organs, Secretary General, Security Council, and the General Assembly, General Assembly is the representative of 193 countries, as you have correctly said, and also, Madam. Each country has one vote, one voice, equal to whatever the country's size is, whatever the country's population is. And therefore I give great importance to the General Assembly. And I think General Assembly could be the game changer, because sometimes you don't need resolutions. Without resolutions, if you bring things to the General Assembly and you get the political wind behind an issue, you can force the Security Council to come to terms, and the Secretary General, of course, is the implementer of all the system.
The UN diplomat was taken on a tour of the red zone in the northeastern side of the country to get a first-hand look at the devastation caused by the April eruptions of the SOUFRIERE volcano. His Excellency, who arrived in the state on Saturday, July 24th, is expected to leave tomorrow.